everybody to the July whiskey tasting. The Whiskey Club virtual tasting for Eureka. I'm really excited about this month's pick and to be joined by some really awesome people who we've worked with for many years at Eureka. We also have an exciting giveaway today that we're excited to announce for people joining us and those having questions. But I'll let Derek and Lorna kind of speak to that. So without further ado, I'd love if our great guests this month would introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves, who they are, what they do, and how they are associated with Corsair.
Sure. So I'm one of the founders of Corsair. I'm Derek Bell, and I was a home brewer for about 10 years. So I made beer, wine, kombucha, sake, cider, mead. And anytime I had a bad batch, I started distilling. And so I made brandy from, if I had some mediocre wine, I'd make brandy. If I had a mediocre beer, I would distill it to whiskey. And sake, I would distill to soju. And so a lot of distilled spirits come from some kind of other fermented beverage. And so just over time, the more I did it, the more I loved it. And my wife was like, well, this is a felony, right? And I guess it kind of is. And I kind of looked up, and felony is sort of life destroying. It's like 5 years in jail and $2,000 fine. And so there was actually, you could get a fuel ethanol permit. You could make your own fuel legally. And so I applied to get that permit, and the lady on the phone said, it's just as much work to get a full distillery permit as it is to get a home fuel ethanol permit. So I said, well, I'll take I'll have the lobster.
Yeah.
So anyways, we started Corsair in 2008, and we won some early awards, and so we were able to get moving. So that's my story. Lorna?
So in 2016, I was homebrewing and working in a brewery in town, just doing kind of some apprenticeship type of work. And through my friend who owns the brewery, he got the email from Corsair, and they were saying, hey, we're looking to sell some used barrels. Also, by the way, we're looking for an assistant brewer. And so I applied for the job, not feeling very confident. I was like, maybe this is a little ambitious to go out for the role. And I was up against guys that had a little more brewing experience than I did. And apparently my boss, Colton, at the time liked me and took me in and taught me everything that I know. And I worked really hard and wanted to prove that I could be here and be in this industry. And apparently it worked out because as of last year, I got promoted to head distiller right before the pandemic. And so it's been a rough ride for the past year, but we're here and we made it, and we're doing better than ever. So excited.
Well, that's awesome. I'm so happy to have you both here, and hopefully, us here in California are still dealing with some of the COVID stuff, but hopefully out in Nashville, things are looking a little bit better. Are you guys both in Nashville?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice. Do you want to tell our wonderful members that are joining us live about this giveaway we're doing tonight?
Yes. So we're going to give away a 15-gallon used barrel, empty, signed by our distillers, to the best question of the night. So if any of you guys want to ask questions, the best question of the night we can ship to the contiguous 48 states a barrel, and they're really cool. And we have people who have been taking barrels, and they have aged all kinds of things that we've had people give us aged honey, aged coffee, aged tea, tons, of course, of aged beers. And we've had people make really cool furniture out of them, and it's just kind of been a fun thing to watch what people do with these things. So, anyways, for the best question tonight, you'll get a barrel. We'll ship it to you.
Super exciting. Yeah. So, like I said, those are in the live chat. Please put questions now throughout the conversation if something comes up, and then at the end, Derek and Lorna will discuss who they believe should be the new owner of a 15-gallon used Corsair barrel, which is super cool. Never done a giveaway like this before on these calls, so super excited. So Derek, you told us a little bit about your background, how Corsair got started. Can you tell us a little bit more about the history of Corsair? You started as a brewer, and then Lorna, for you, like what brought you to Corsair to begin with, and just was it kind of, you tell me, like what led you to being a master distiller at Corsair? Was that something you always wanted to do, or so Derek, please start us off. Maybe tell us a little bit more about the history. I know you said the brewing stuff, so.
Sure. So yeah, I started off as a home brewer and did that for many years before I ever was a home distiller. I actually started building stills, and the more I did it, the more I loved it. And it was really just fun to build them. In fact, I was driving home one day and I got pulled over by a cop.
Was it copper? Was it copper?
Yeah, it was copper. And he looks over and he said, "Is that a still in your car?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry."
You were on moonshiners, were you, Derek?
I don't look like a moonshiner. And so he just kind of looked at me, he said, "Hey, you know what? I can't even deal with this. This is so out there. I'm just going to ignore this." He said, "But I really appreciate you being honest." And he said, "This is like a felony, but I'm not going to charge you because you were honest with me." He said, "I haven't seen one of those since I was a kid, so I'm just going to let you go." So I was like, there's like a fork in the
the history of Corsair could have been over at that point,
exactly.
Or never begun. If that cop, do you have that cop's name, or do you remember? I mean, I hope that like a monthly box shows up at his house with Corsair
on my deathbed. He's going to be there. But we started building stills, and the more we did it, the more we just loved it. We were very, just sort of passionate about it. And then I got to go to the Brook Distilling Academy in Isle of Scotland. I also took courses at Siebel, which is the Brewing Institute, outside Chicago. And so, but I got to go to Brook and I got to work with Jim McCune, who's a many-time Master Distiller of the Year, and Duncan McGilvray, who sort of ran the shop. It was just really inspirational to be around them. They were doing some cool stuff where they were finding these, they were taking these ancient Viking barleys, like very primitive barleys, and they were malting them themselves, and they were smoking them themselves, and they were making really unusual whiskeys, and they were just doing a lot of experimentation. They just looked like they were just having so much fun. I was like, man, I want to be these guys when I grow up. And so when I got back to the United States,
how long were you there for? I'm sorry if you said that already.
Oh, it was just 2 weeks, so it was pretty quick. But it was just really a transformational experience. And, they were in this ultra conservative, very old world of Scotch distilling, and they were doing really new things. But they were still respectful of the
If they saw what you're doing now, they would probably they wouldn't be happy about it.
I don't know
back on anything.
Yeah. So, but it was just really interesting to me because they had this great balance of respecting tradition, but also really pushing and trying to break with tradition. And I thought that was really fascinating. And I just really loved what they were doing. And so I think that was a huge thing for me, and where I really fell in love with single malts, and where I thought that, there's just a lot of great room in America for experimentation of creating an American single malt. And I just, I love barley. We started a malt house a couple years later so we could malt and smoke our own grains, and that was direct.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So this area, the Octomore Fields, where they're growing their barley, which became their Octomore whiskey, and they had built this beautiful malt house, and they were just really passionate about the sort of whole grain to glass. I mean, no one was even really saying grain to glass, but they were trying to do that, and they were really trying to connect with the farmers and really have this sort of much larger mindset, which I thought was just so cool and felt really ahead of what a lot of other people were doing. And to my knowledge, there wasn't really that mindset here. Now there's a lot more of that, but at the time it felt really progressive and groundbreaking. And so that was just really inspiring me. I wanted to do that in the States, and I was especially thought that I was seeing all these craft breweries and small wineries popping up, and I really wanted Tennessee to have some little cutting edge new thinking when it came to distilling.
And what year did the distillery start?
2008.
2008. Yeah. And I think we've been carrying you guys since like 2010.
Yeah. You guys have been, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, you guys make great stuff. I'm more than happy to do it. And then Lorna, the question I had for you, what kind of led you to Corsair to begin with, and where did the passion start for beer or distilling? And
so I actually, with my best friend, when I moved to Nashville, I had my sister and one of my best friends living here, and we were both loving craft beer and just loving all the new products that were coming out. And her roommate at the time was moving out, and he had all this homebrew equipment. He's like, I don't have room for it. Like, I'll sell it to you for cheap. And we were like, cool. Yeah, like that sounds really fun. Like, we love drinking beer. We're going to learn how to make beer. My friend had this idea she would start a brewery with me, and it turns out I cared more about the reading and the fundamentals and all about how to brew. And then she was like, just wanted to drink beer and hang out. Okay.
Yeah, that's what everyone thinks it is, right?
Yeah.
I just sit around and drink beer all day.
You didn't read anything, did you? And she's like, yeah, like I read a little bit. And I was like, oh my God. Okay. So
is that like, does that stem from like, have you always had like a passion for like learning how to put things together or like making things, or
Yeah, I feel like I've always been pretty crafty. I actually have more of an art background. I went to art school. I've studied art history. So no chemistry, biology background as far as, brewing and distilling goes. But definitely I've always loved working with my hands, and just really like that feeling of creating something is very...
Well, your degree paid off. You're making art. It's just in a different form. It's just in a liquid form, right?
And just, a few $1,000s in debt after, it was worth it. So I was, just really loving that side of creating something, and seeing that finished product to the end is amazing, and even just using a homebrew kit is like, okay, well, I made this beer. So through that's how I started working at the brewery, mostly just getting paid in beer at the brewery. And it was just one of my good friends that I met over time, and he saw that passion in me and said, you should apply for Corsair, just see what happens. He knew Tyler, who's our COO. I was thinking like, that's the reason I got the job. I got a good recommendation, and he was actually like, oh yeah, Tyler, like, you did that all on your own. So that made me feel good. So apparently they, Colton saw something in me as well, and everyone has just been encouraging me along this journey, and I've stuck with it. And it's, this job is really fun. The summer heat is not my favorite part.
Oh yeah.
Very sweaty days, but very rewarding.
I remember the last time I was at Corsair was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and we had we brought like all our GMs there, and you guys were great, and you had like a whole dinner set up for us. Were you both there at the time?
I remember that. Yeah.
Anyways, But I do remember it being very warm on our distillery tour. It was July, so it was probably right around this time.
Yeah.
And there was a guy there. I think his name was Buddy.
Oh
Yeah, Buddy.
I know Buddy.
Buddy was great.
That is like
He was definitely a character. And he gave us our tour, and he definitely was a character. But we had a lot of fun, and I highly encourage anybody that's in Nashville to go to the distillery. It's a beautiful space, and it just was an amazing experience. I can't wait to get back out there. Now, Derek, are you is your partner Andrew still part of the distillery?
Yeah. So Andrew is essentially we're sort of doing a buyout, and so he's still involved, and he's still involved for another 2 years, but he's essentially been transitioning.
Got it. So. Yeah, I remember him. He had a very like Lorna. He seemed to have a very strong passion for the technical and scientific and chemistry side of the business. And I remember sitting in his office, and he was like pouring me these specialty blends he made for like his wedding or something like that. And it was just a really great experience. So I was just curious if he still was there.
I would say culturally, we really encourage everyone to be a maker, to be hands-on, and to, I would say that in general, so many people here homebrew. A lot of our bartenders make their own bitters or make their own syrups and make cocktails. And so I'd say that, we really encourage people to be makers. And I think it's really important to use the word maker because, we have a lot of friends, or I feel like there's a lot of people now who are digital, they're making stuff on the computer, they're making music, they're making art, they're making whatever. And there's just something about, physically like sweating it out and making something by hand that I think it's just, it just requires a certain amount of grit. And, I've had a lot of people who are like, I want to be a distiller. And it's like, okay, well, do you like being 120 degrees and like it's so humid you can barely breathe and you're basically like carrying 50-pound bags?
Shoveling out the mash tun.
Yeah. And so it's you just have to make sure, like what I always tell people is, because I have a lot of young people who are like, hey, I want to learn, can I take you out for coffee and learn about distilling or whatever? And so what I just say is like, you just have to make sure you really love doing the work and doing the not glamorous, the hard part. Like if you still love doing that, then you should do it. And so, for example, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, and my mom actually had a friend who's a veterinarian, and I got to go intern there. And the first day I was there, I thought, oh, you just play with puppies and kittens all day, right? So, which is actually what I pretty much do at the distillery now with Copper.
Yeah.
But so the first day I was there was a pregnancy gone bad, and there were a bunch of puppies that were stillborn, and it was heartbreaking. Oh. And I was like, wow, this is hard. This is brutal, and it's like gut wrenching, and I don't know if I can do this. And one of the main people was like, look, you have to. You have to really care about the good and the bad and soldier through it. And you have to care about the actual hands-on work and what that looks like. And so, a lot of people think we sit around all day and we sniff, whiskey snifters and, boiling corn and the not glamorous side of things. And so to me, it's like, if you really love that side of it, you're going to really love the whole thing. And so just make sure. And that's why I think it's important to encourage, I really want people who are makers in the sense that they're, woodworkers or they're artists or they're whatever, and they're really, or they're home brewers is what a lot of our people are, but they really don't mind that dirty, sweaty, which for me, because I spend so much time on the computer, it's really cathartic for me to get away from the computer and to do something with my hands. And to me, that is an incredible stress reliever. And so I think if that's your mindset, I think that you'll probably be really good. I think that, you really enjoy and you'll be a good brewer or distiller.
Yeah, I mean, it's evident in the product that you produce. And I think that's a good philosophy of like, not always hiring for skill, but hiring for like what best fits the company culture, right? I mean, I just remembering being there, and like the craft cocktail program that you guys had going on when I was there was amazing, and just what you were putting out. And you had a bartender there with a very long beard. Yeah, so it was an amazing experience. And again, can't encourage. I see Shay S wants to know if you're open on Tuesdays, and if she wants a private tour. We'll have to follow up on that, Shay.
Yeah.
But anyways, I was going to save this question for later, but can you tell us about the distillery cats? Someone asked.
Yeah. He's been hanging out here, just not. We just woke him up.
He was asleep. Okay. Now.
Gary Malberg wanted to know about the cats, and have they ever won Employee of the Month?
He's.
They should.
Oh yeah.
What's his name?
Hopper.
Copper's
a rescue.
Oh, Copper.
Yeah, we love him. He's insane.
We're going to get into to tasting the whiskey here just shortly. As a reminder, if you join late, best question of the night gets an empty 15-gallon Corsair. What is it going to be? A triple smoke barrel, or
It'll probably be a rye barrel.
Rye or triple?
It'll be rye or triple smoke. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
So with the cat, so if you start a distillery or a brewery and you have a lot of grain, you need to have a cat. So we were having a mouse problem.
Okay, I was gonna say.
I reached out to Duncan McIlvray of Brook, and I said, "What do you guys do? We don't want to spray. We don't want to spray any kind of chemical. We don't want to put down any kind of poison because this is a food facility. We don't. It's very much against for us that that's we would never want to do something like that." And so he was like, "Well, why don't you do what the Egyptians did?" And I was like, "What? Build pyramids?" And he was like, "Cats. The cats saved the granaries, and we're key to Egypt becoming this super civilization." He's like, "Americans, you just have no sense of history." I was like, "God, I guess we really don't." But so So anyways, if you're out there and you're thinking about starting a distillery, you're gonna have to have a distillery.
So I want to get into the box. So everyone should have gotten their koozie and their Corsair glass. We had some truffle beer there this month, always good. And then, as always, tasting notes here. Now, Lorna and Derek, I believe you kept a couple of the bottles, so you're tasting what we're tasting tonight.
Yep.
I made the classic mistake and didn't take off the plastic. Sorry. And then we have a lot of questions coming in, so we'll leave extra time for all the questions that are being answered or asked. So where is my glass? All right. So tell us why this is unique, because this is never, to my knowledge, you've never made a version of triple smoke such like this one. So please tell us what is unique about the bottle that everyone got this month, and why they can brag to their friends that no one else has this.
So first and foremost, I will say the smoke bottles that were hanging around Corsair that the staff got to try has been rave reviews. So I think there's a problem where now they're demanding the same style. So it is our classic triple smoke recipe, and it has the peat, beechwood, and cherrywood smoked malt in there. But in this case, so we normally bottle at 80 proof, and this is going to be at 100. And some people get a little intimidated by that higher proof, but I think
our members have that problem, to be quite honest with you.
Good, which I would assume with the whiskey club, we're not too afraid of proof. And as we all know, proof is but a number. You can have something at 120 and it be smooth, just like something at 80 that could be hot. So bringing that proof up has, to me, brought out just so much more peat than there's before. And some people might love that. Some people might hate that. And again, I'm assuming in the whiskey club, y'all are fans of peat. So I really, like, right off the bat, get tons of peat on the nose. Just really rich, like, heavy peat.
Yeah, one thing that always stood out to me about triple smoke is, like, it has that, like, I know you guys use cherry wood, but you can taste, like, it, like, to me, it's like boozy smoked cherries, like, is the best way I can describe it. And that's something I've always really loved, especially in cocktails. Like, it adds a lot of complexity to a drink. Yeah. But I mean, it's not like, it's very balanced. There's a lot of flavors going on. You have sweet, you have smoky, you obviously have, you know, that 100 proof packs a little bit of a punch. You feel the burn. On the nose here, just obviously campfire smoke, that big peat bomb. Like you said, to me, you nailed it. Like, the peat is so much more intense at the 100 proof than it is normally in the 80 proof.
Yeah. The thing about our peat too that I've always loved is you'll get more of that brininess to it. Like,
yeah.
Peat. So that, to me, you know, some batches you'll get that salted toffee caramel kind of richness to it. You know, we always strive for consistency with batches, but the beauty of craft is you're going to get something slightly unique with each batch. But yeah, the peat is coming through so well on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope our members are able to enjoy a glass with us tonight. That's amazing to hear that the people at the distillery are clamoring for maybe this to become maybe a limited release in the future. But like I said, our members are the first to get it. So gotta throw that out there for those people that when, you know, in a year from now when they see it on the shelves, 100 proof Corsair triple smoke, they can say, you know, I still have my bottle of the original. Yeah. I also love that you guys put, I don't know if I love it or hate it, that the 75, 50%, because one, it reminds me I probably drank too much of it in one night, and when it goes from here to here, and I can actually see that, and I'm like, but it's pretty cool that you guys did that.
You know, that's to make it easier for bartenders at the end of the night.
For inventory.
I mean, yeah, when you're doing your inventory, if you've ever worked as a bartender, you know, it's just one of those things that you got to do, and anything we can do to make their lives easier. I
like how my mind immediately goes to I'm drinking too much whiskey, and then you're like, no, it has a technical application for our bartenders, which makes sense. What's your guys' you know, we're gonna make a cocktail here in a minute, and again, I want to leave extra time here for some questions. So whose idea was triple smoke? Like, where did that idea come from? And you kind of already answered this. I was asking where you source the cherry wood, the beech wood, and the peat from, but
yeah,
you're saying you're.
So I wrote a book called Firewater where we did about 120 different smoke experiments. So when I was in Scotland, I really loved the really peaty single malts. And when I got back to the States, I wanted to do an American peaty single malt. But unfortunately, the peat in Tennessee, when you burn it, when you pour malt and then you smoke, it has these really nasty, like, burning tire off flavors. And it just didn't taste right. And so I was talking to my uncle, who I've got a bunch of family in Huntsville, Alabama, and they are really into the World Series of Barbecue. I don't know if you watch the World Series.
What is it? World Series of what?
World Series.
I'm prepping my ginger right now. I apologize.
And so he said, listen, some of the people who are winning, they're not using hickory and mesquite and things you think of. They're winning with alderwood, some of the fruit woods like apple or cherry or pear, or some of the nut woods like pecan or macadamia nut. So I kind of wanted to step back and say, okay, if we were just going to start over and say, what's the best smoke for whiskey? What would it be? And so we started smoking lots of different malts and making whiskeys and experimenting and seeing what we really liked. And when you're judged, when you're in a judging, you're judged on the nose and you're judged on the body, and then you're judged on the finish. And the finish, just so you know, is when you swallow. Here, let's all just do this together. So here's the nose. Now I'm going to take a sip. And when I swallow, that's where the finish starts. And so we used to actually take a stopwatch and see. So feel that burn?
Yeah.
Still going. For me, it's still going. It's starting to lessen. It's kind of run out. Now it's pretty much over. So, but what was interesting is different smoked woods that were oilier or not quite as oily, you can actually have a longer finish. And if it's a finish that you like, which I love Pete, of course, having that longer finish will give you better scoring. So what we really found was that a lot of times we'd make a whiskey where it was flat on the nose, but it had a great finish, or it had a really good body, like some of the hardwoods like hickory have a great like meaty body, but they're kind of weak on the nose and they quickly wear out on the finish. And so by having multiple types of smoke, you have what I want is really strong nose. So when you pop it off, I want you to just be able to smell in the room that smokiness. And then the body, of course, has to be there because that's so central. And then that finish is really the last thing that the judge, that's in the judge's mind. And so if you can hit all three of those, you're going to score a lot better. And what we found was Pete's great, but Pete was really strong on the finish and a little bit of the body, not so much on the nose. And a lot of the cherry or a lot of the fruit woods that are they're very light. They don't make it all the way to the finish typically, but they're great on the front end and they can have a lot of personality. And so that's why by mixing different types of smoke, you would score a little bit better in competitions. And so that was a huge part of why we were doing that. And we were experimenting with lots of different types of smoke. So that's where that came out of.
It's great. I mean, that's a very interesting answer. You could have just said, "Oh, I just randomly chose three things," but I love the complex.
Yeah, just put yourself together, like no big deal.
And here we are.
Right, you saw me on my cell phone. I had to text my wife to come bring me a lemon because I forgot my lemon. So we're going to make a drink here, and this is our Penicillin Cocktail that we can get at Eureka. Give me 1 second. Sorry.
Roger.
And we've done a lot of those smokes. So we've Conwood. So we've got Wildfire. We've, of course, Cherry. We've played around quite a bit.
Sorry, I had my when my wife brought the lemon in, my French bulldog managed to sneak in after her. So we're gonna make the cocktail here. As always, we have the recipe on your cards. You can go and revisit the tasting notes, a little bit history about this specific expression of Corsair, and then obviously a description here of the distillery. So this is our penicillin recipe, and there's many ways to make a penicillin with blended scotch and kind of a heavily peated Isla Scotch float on the top or a spray. To me, like I've always said that Corsair Triple Smoke is like kind of a blend of the two, and it serves both purposes. So I've already sliced my ginger. Trick for budding, people, home bartenders. You don't need a peeler for a ginger root. Just take the edge of your spoon and you can just slowly, well, not even slowly, it works much better than a peeler. And every ginger root is a little bit different. They're like snowflakes. And you can get into the grooves and crevices and really get that skin off. But you want to take the skin off the ginger because the skin is bitter. We don't want bitterness in the drink. It's a good rule of thumb too if you're juicing ginger always remove the skin. But you want to use the ginger as quick as possible, because once the skin comes off, the ginger will start growing those little hairs and dry out. And we want the ginger to be as juicy as possible. So I cut 3 ginger slices already. We're just going to muddle that up. And you want to muddle it by itself, because if you add any volume to the shaker tin, you're not going to be able to get as much pressure on there. And ginger is a root, not a ton of juice in it, but the juice is very powerful. So we want to make sure we extract as much juice as possible. And it's a really aggressive muddle. You're almost turning it into a puree with your muddler. So it should look something like this when you're all done and finished. I'm going to take my citrus, and always remember to use fresh citrus. The fresher, the better. And we're going to do 3/4 of an ounce of fresh lemon. And then if you have your honey syrup already made, it's a rich honey syrup. So it's 2 parts honey, 1 part water. And we're going to do equal parts to our citrus. So we're going to do 3/4 ounce. So really simple cocktail. We have ginger, we have fresh squeezed lemon juice, and we have a honey syrup. Then we're going to add 2 ounces of the 100 proof Corsair triple smoke. We are going to add ice. And this is the actual recipe that we use for our penicillin on our menu at Eureka. So another perk of being a Whiskey Club member is learning our recipes. Sometimes the ones we make in the rest, sometimes the ones we use in the restaurant, sometimes unique ones. I'm just going to rinse this out really quick. All right. Remember, the biggest thing when you shake is the smile. I'm sure everyone at home shakes the same way I do.
That cocktail came from?
That's a new shaker.
Gonna get our glass. Now, I thought I had large ice cubes, but apparently I didn't. So at the restaurant, we use large ice cubes, but today I'm just using regular ice. So you have, oh, what am I doing? Well, I should be drinking out of this glass. My mistake. We're gonna add ice. And then we're gonna double strain this, because as much as we love ginger, we don't want a ton of it in the drink. We just want the juices. We don't want those bits of whole ginger. So double strain it. Get like I tell our bartenders at Eureka, I say every ounce counts. So tap that. All right. And that's penicillin. Oh, that looks awesome in that glass. That logo pops, which is a perfect segue to my next question. What is the significance of these guys? And when is Lorna joining these 3 guys on the bottle?
That's true.
There.
Is there a tie-in to Reservoir Dogs? What's the story?
So I'm a huge Tarantino fan, and there definitely is a nod to Reservoir Dogs. I love, like I said, I'm a huge Tarantino fan. So at the Nashville Film Festival, I'm trying to remember which film it was, but Tarantino used our distillery as a green room and had a bunch of people over and had drinks at our distillery. So I don't know. I hope he's a fan. But here's the other thing. So there's also a practical thing, which is that I really wanted a logo that if you were 3 or 4 people back at a bar. You can really see it from far away. And I like really high contrast logos. So I like that it's so, harsh black and white that you can really see it from afar. And I feel like our logo, like I'm looking across at, our logo on the same, I just feel like from pretty far back, you can instantly recognize it. And if you're a small brand and you're trying to stand out, you've got to do whatever you can to be memorable like that.
So do they have names?
The middle one is a very generous likeness to me.
So it is true.
Hey, that's idealized. That's before I got married. Put on 30. Well,
I feel it. Trust me.
Truth comes out. Truth comes out.
Yeah. So that's the genesis of.
I have some more questions for you here, but a lot of these questions are kind of in the chat already. So I think I'll use our last, 15 minutes here. So 20 minutes, it looks like we have. Hopefully get to as many of these questions as possible. So I know there's a lot of questions. I'll try my best to get to all of them. But I apologize if I don't get to you. Some of these questions we've already asked. So unfortunately, I'm not going to re-ask them. So Longevity International Corporation, that's literally the person name that asked this. As part of your experimentation process, what was your biggest distilling mistake and what is your best fortunate mistake? Lorna's already laughing. So there's already a story that she's apparently maybe not allowed to tell. She's like looking at you for approval. I can't tell.
I don't know if you know.
Go ahead.
Even better.
Let me just preface this story with I was very new and I was still getting the hang of some labeling of how things were done. And at the time, we were making about 5 different spirits in a week. Okay?
5 different spirits in what?
5 different mashes and spirits, and things were happening very rapidly, and I was learning very quickly. So, and it was hot, of course, so your brain doesn't always work well in the heat. And so we had made a quinoa mash, and we were also making a pecan mash that would go into our Hydra blend. And I might have labeled everything as quinoa. And those things all went into the still together. And it became Lorna's Reserve or Pequinois. And as punishment, I had to not.
Was it good?
It actually was not the worst thing. We had to do a little bit of work and find a magic place for it to end up. But let's just say that I had to barrel everything myself. I did the artwork myself on the barrel, and we put them in the back row, and they aged for a long time. And everyone was kind of like, well, they're not quite ready yet, and we don't know what we're going to do with them. But we figured it out, and in the end, I thought I was going to be fired, of course, because I blended some whiskey, but it made an interesting product that didn't quite make it to our shelves, but it went somewhere.
So was that the biggest mistake and the most fortunate mistake, or is there, Derek, is there a fortunate mistake that you can think of?
I would say the worst mistake I've made was we were playing around with making hopped whiskeys where we would take.
Rasputin.
The idea was that if whiskey's distilled beer, rather than making a very primitive mash, a very primitive distiller's beer, what if we actually took very finished beers and distilled them? And so we made a bunch of hopped whiskeys, different types of hops. And some of them were really interesting, some were really good, some were really bad. But a really bad one was we dry hopped. For those of you who don't know, dry hopping is essentially where you add you're not brewing with the hops, you're adding the hops at the very end, letting it sit. And so, but what we didn't realize was that alcohol is a much more intense solvent than typical, very low gravity beer. And so it just made the stuff that was like, it was like a really rough Amaro. It was just, It was nasty stuff. So that's probably the worst unhappy accident. In terms of happy accident, I made a it was like a beechwood smoked amaranth whiskey, and it tasted like peanut butter. Amaranth is a grain. It's very difficult to work with.
We actually are launching we're launching a cocktail on our menu that has amaranth leaves as a garnish.
Oh, cool!
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's cool because you can use the leaves and you can use the grain. It's a very multi-purpose. But anyways, that was an interesting happy accident because it tasted like peanut butter. It had this very unusual kind of like screwball if you've had that.
Yeah.
It was very, so I think that was a happy accident. We haven't done anything with it. Yeah. And then I think one of the things that we were shocked about was when you're doing different types of smoke, barley is just this amazing sponge. It really just soaks up smoke. And whereas corn, it's very hard to smoke corn. It doesn't transfer that to the whiskey. But malted quinoa really soaks up smoke and is fantastic. And it's actually it's a fantastic grain. I would say it's just as good as barley. So I think that was a happy accident where we learned. So we just weren't expecting that. So, to me as a distiller, I'm trying to build my little toolbox, my paintbrush set, to give me more and more things to work with as we design and create whiskeys over the years. So that was awesome. Like that in the back of my head.
So Rodney Archer asked, in California, we're seeing a lot more women winemakers. Is there a trend of women becoming distillers as well?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah. It's awesome. It's, slow rolling, but I feel like every year you go to conventions and you just see more and more women come.
That's great.
And just more diversity in general is huge. And key is no offense to all the men out there, but we got to bring more women to the table and people of color.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All backgrounds.
It does seem like women have a better sense of smell. I don't know if you saw, there was a New York Times article recently, and we had another someone from Tennessee, from Nicole from Dickel was in that article, and Fawn from Uncle Nearest. So we actually
Rodney actually mentioned Fawn as well in his comment. My wife we're constantly coming home. My wife says, "What's that smell?" And I'm like, "I don't smell anything." But
oh yeah.
So Scott. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your last name wrong. Scott Sier says, "What are you most excited about in the next 5 years? And have you considered any collaborations with Chattanooga whiskey?"
We're in the Distillers Guild with them, so we see them all the time. I don't think we haven't really, we've done a lot of collaborations. We've done some collaborations with breweries, with barrels and stuff like that. And then we've done, we've done quite a few collaborations, but no, we haven't done anything with those guys. But I would say in terms of I wouldn't mind. They're great, and we like a lot of what they're doing. I would say, I'll just say what I'm excited about. So I've got a farm right outside Nashville, and so I've been growing some heritage corn, this Tennessee red cob. So it's very hard to find in much quantities. And so I think that, in the beginning, we were doing a lot of experimentation with unusual grains. We were playing around with different types of smoke. We were experimenting with different aspects of fermentation that are more common in brew making and not so much. Like, for example, we lagered some of our distiller's beer. That's a different type of yeast at a much lower temperature. We were also, doing maybe malolactic fermentation. We were doing lots of different, Brettanomyces is a yeast competitor. So we were doing just lots of different types of experimentation. And I think that especially a lot with grains. And so now I think that, I'm really excited to sort of more hone down on more traditional types of corn and more sort of ancient grains. And so for me, I'm really excited to do some more stuff with heirloom corns, and still very much within the tradition of bourbon and Tennessee whiskey. A lot of bourbon drinkers are very traditional, and you don't want to, sort of offend that, sort of sacred link to the past and whatnot. So this is sort of, not doing something radically different, sort of going back and sort of the rabbit hole.
Awesome. So Lucas Stidham wants to know, imagine you could steal any bottle of whiskey in the world without consequences. What would it be?
Oh my gosh. That is a good question.
Steal any bottle of whiskey in the world. A really old Macallan,
50-year
like
Macallan.
a 50-year. So when I was at Brooklyn, we got to try like a 60-year-old. It's amazing when when you're at a place that has so much history, because Americans, we can't think more than what's happening at the end of the week, and they have this just ultra long sense of history. And so there was this Rothschild Baroness or something in her personal stash, and we got to go and try, like, this is what happens when you age stuff for a long time. And I'm thinking like, oh, a long time, like, happy 23. And they're like, what?
No.
That's just like a joke.
That's normal. Normal timeline for us.
There you go.
Oh,
there
my
you go.
Gosh. Yeah.
Wow.
I just started watching that
Nice.
thing on Netflix. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm only one episode in, but very fascinating. Probably some Japanese whiskeys aged in ultra rare wood casks.
I like all the Cavallons. So for me, we can't get those here for some reason.
It's a
So
little tricky.
that's probably Taiwanese whiskey I think is really fantastic. Japanese whiskey, probably the weirdest whiskey I've tried. I've made a lot of weird whiskeys. But when I was in Iceland with American Distilling Institute, a bunch of the people from that, and we got to try a smoked whiskey that was smoked with sheep dung. So there's there's no trees in Iceland.
Wait, what was it smoked with?
So they
Sheep
have a
dung,
lot of
sheep
unusual fuel sources to keep warm in the winter. And one of the things they do is they
You're saying a word I don't think I've ever heard before.
dry out sheep dung,
Oh.
sheep poop. They dry it out and they smoke it and they light it on fire.
Yeah, question.
Cutting you off now.
Oh my gosh. Oh my god.
Sheep dung. That is.
There was actually a whiskey made with it, and this was a tradition, some kind of crazy Icelandic tradition.
Oh my god. Was it good?
That's.
It was unusual.
I'm lost for words, to be quite honest with you.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Sorry, I'm just trying to scan through these questions here. So one question, and I apologize. Let me find out who asked this. And I was going to ask you this as well, but I'm sure it's a question you get asked a lot, is why the 15-gallon barrels? Like, why the smaller barrels? And, a lot of the comments I've seen on some threads that I'm part of really are saying, like, how can you get this much flavor out of aging it for 1 year? Also, just to clarify, I know it doesn't say 100 proof on the bottle anywhere, but can you confirm that these bottles are 100 proof, right?
Which should say it.
It should say it. Is it not?
This like the sticker on the front.
You see the
Oh, it
sticker?
does, right down here at the bottom. My apologies. So if they can't get on the bottle, there should be a sticker right here that says, legally it has to be on there. So I was surprised I couldn't find it. So it says 100 proof there. So if you want to confirm, and you should also have the Eureka sticker. But why the smaller barrels, and how do they affect the aging process?
So I would say a couple things. I'd say that, we're transitioning to all 53s.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. So, but here's the thing: when you're starting a new distillery, the smaller barrels have a better surface area to volume ratio, but it ends up making a more expensive whiskey because a lot of the so much of it's the labor, but you're ending up with small, so it ends up costing more per gallon. So, but here's the thing: is that it ages. It definitely ages aspects of it very faster. Oxidation does not. You have a certain amount of time, but so really for us, we started with small barrels so we could get stuff to age faster to get our product to market, and then we've been slowly trying to jump up to 30s and 53s for a long time. So, but it takes, it's when you're a small distillery, it takes a while.
And it's tricky blending wise too. I mean, our barrel room manager, Adrian, is a wizard. I say it a lot. He is so good at knowing where everything is and which row and which part of the building. And really constantly monitoring, what is at 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, etc.
So you have more fluctuation and they're more temperature sensitive. So a larger barrel, just because it's more volume of liquid, is going to hold its temperature better. So I would say that, but I think that there's been a lot of people who sort of criticize small barrels, and to me, it's just another tool in your tool belt. And there's times when there's times when we've done some amazing things with small barrels and competed with much bigger brands and won better awards in them. But nothing beats the nose and the skill of the person behind the still and testing the barrel and all that. So
cool. So I'm going to combine one of my questions that I had here because you have a similar question from Shane Sowers. I'm going to combine his and my questions together here. So in 2015, you guys were named the top 10 most innovative companies. I don't know if that's in the world or in the United States, but what have you done in the past 6 years that would make that title relevant today? And to piggyback on that, Shane saying, what are you most excited / interested in for the future?
Yeah, so I would just say that one of our biggest projects right now is we're getting a much larger column still up and running. It'll allow us to do, we've mostly been focused on rye and single malts, and this will let us do a lot more with corn. And so I would say that, unfortunately, everything takes forever in whiskey, so we're gonna need a few more years to get there. But I think there's an amazing opportunity with Tennessee whiskey. So there's been a lot of experimentation with bourbon. You've had a lot of people who are buying the same juice, and so they've been doing different things to differentiate themselves, like secondary cask finishes, aging, over the ocean, so it ages differently, things like that. And I feel like with Tennessee whiskey, there hasn't been a whole lot of experimentation. And so I think that what's exciting for us is there's a great opportunity to take Tennessee whiskey in ways that it hasn't been before. I mean, Jack is the largest single brand, non-blended, that is. Of course, Johnny Walker is larger as a blend. But so I think there's a lot of room, or I think there's, tons of experimentation that we can do on that front. And I think that in the next couple of years, you'll see a lot of new things from us in that regard. The bummer about 53 is everything takes long.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention, if you take a look on the bottle here, there's some other pretty great awards. Artisan Whiskey of the Year from Whiskey Advocate, World Whiskey Distiller of the Year from Wizards of Whiskey, 9.7 out of 10 on Whiskey Magazine. So obviously very highly accredited. Yeah. If you guys, I know it's late for you. Can we do a couple more questions?
Sure. We still have to release our brandy.
That's true. We've got a lot.
You guys have a brandy?
Started and we forgot about.
There's things floating around.
Yeah.
Some things we can talk about, some things we can't. I think too, just the side of continuing to move forward in the single malt category too. I mean, we've already made a great single malt, and we want to keep pushing that as well. And we're working on some things at the moment. But just staying in that category and reminding people that we can make a damn good single malt and keep being quirky and interesting.
And I think in the beginning we were doing lots of experiments and trying to sort of figure out what we want to do. And I feel like a lot of what we're doing now is really trying to hone in, and now it's a little bit more finesse for us and playing a sort of a longer game of really trying to make our spirits better and better. It's more of an iterative process, and it's slower. But I think that the quality of our spirits has just gone way up from when we first started.
Cool.
So, yeah.
2 more questions.
Sure.
If you could drink, so Jeff Lead wants to know if you could drink with any one historical figure from the American whiskey industry, who would you choose? Don't say Lorna, because you're already drinking with her. I know she's a big deal. But
God,
Oh my gosh, I have so many ideas.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it'd probably just be like, I'd like to sit down with Jim Beam and Jack Daniels and have a drink with the 2 of
Oh
them.
my gosh.
See what they have to say. I can travel through time, right?
Yeah.
yeah. No, time is a construct.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, I would say we were just talking about Nicole Austin, Tom Weaver, Lisa Wicker, which I have had the luxury of being in their company and their presence. But just like badass women that are doing really cool things. It's always
Well, Lorna, you're a badass woman that's doing great things.
Thank you.
So I'd love to have a drink with you when I come to Nashville.
Hit me up. I'll show you around.
Awesome.
I've been lucky because I got to work with Jim McCune. We got to spend a lot of time with David Pickrell, before he passed.
Oh my gosh.
So we've gotten, to spend some time with some pretty amazing people.
Yeah.
It breaks my heart that Gabe Lorenzo passed away recently from Tuttle Town Spirits. We spent a lot of time with him. It's great that we got to meet him while he was on this earth. I don't know. That's a hard question. Yeah.
All right, I'm trying to find one to close us out. And then, do you guys want to pick the winner? Do you remember all the questions? I'll be honest with you, I haven't really been keeping track, but let's. I'll do one more question, then you guys can let me know. And no, I did not. Some people are saying my ginger looks like a potato. I assure you, it's ginger.
It
It's
is
a very
nasty.
large piece of ginger.
I've never seen ginger that.
It's California ginger. I don't even know if it comes from California. So
Special ginger.
trying to find.
Pick a good one.
I know.
No pressure.
No pressure.
You can always follow.
Sorry, give me a second here. Dead air. There's nothing worse than dead air. I apologize. All right, we'll go with this one. So Frank Zhang wants to know, what are some of the biggest challenges you face right now, and what do you think is the next big thing in the whiskey scene?
Biggest challenges. 2020.
2020 was brutal.
Yeah.
2020 was a tough year.
Hand sanitizer. That's all I can. I'm so glad we could help out, and I really do I'm so fortunate. I stayed employed, health insurance, healthy, all the above, but I never want to make hand sanitizer again. Those were dark days, and we had a really, really close-knit team. So I will say those are some of my happiest and most frustrating days here. And
we had a lot of friends in the hospitality bar and restaurant world whose lives were just destroyed. I mean, I had a friend in town. He owns 11 restaurants, and he called me and said, I just let 600 people go, and I feel like I just ruined 600 people's lives. And then I had another friend who she owns about 8 restaurants, and she said we just let 400 people go. And then I had a friend who works at one of the big hotels in town. They said they just let 2,000 people go. So within about 72 hours, there were like 5,000 people who lost their jobs in Nashville, which is a much smaller population, than California, Tennessee compared to California. And I mean, it was just, it was horrible. It was devastating. And it really, really hurt a lot of good people. And now, I mean, I feel like we have a lot of people who they're leaving the industry and they don't want to come back.
Yeah.
We would see these horror stories. I'm sure you've seen some of the articles recently, but I mean, someone would come in and we'd say, hey, you have to wear a mask, and they'd freak out. It's like, listen, the mayor mandated this. We didn't these are the rules. We have to do this. And, our staff was treated horribly, by some people. And it's like, and they're thinking, I'm going to come in here and risk my life and maybe get COVID to serve terrible people who are acting up and they're mad about everything. And, I just think a lot of people said, you know what, this isn't worth it. And so, I think that the world of hospitality really got beat up, and it's exciting that, people, as they've gotten vaccinated, they're traveling, and we're seeing stuff come back to life, and our downtown is come back. It doesn't quite feel the same. Yeah. It's come back a lot. It's been interesting, but I just think that, 2020 was brutal. And I think the after effects, we don't even know. But think about 9/11 and how different it is to travel now versus before.
Yeah.
Get to the airport with 5 minutes and run through security and jump on the plane. And it was just a different world. And so, we don't even totally know what the long-term effects are. And we don't even know if it's going to come back. Are we going to have more shutdowns? Is the Delta going to come back? But I think that there were, we have a lot of friends in the bar and restaurant and hotel world and travel world who just really got beat up. And it's nuts. When I think of the struggles we have, I think, I think it's going to be harder for the industry to come. It's going to take years for it to recover.
Well, I don't want to end on a negative note. So the second part of the question, sorry, and I feel for you. Obviously, we felt the effects of that as well, and in what we do. And one of the positive things is that this club was built out of COVID. So one of the positive things. But what do you see? What's next for the American whiskey scene? What's the next big thing? What in your opinion, what's the next big thing?
Well, I'll just jump out there first. I'd say that, I hope we have a roaring 20s. I hope that we have an awesome, after the.
Hey, I'll drink to that.
Brutal, we can all drink to that. Cheers. I hope we have an amazing, we're all having great drinks and we're having great times. And, we have an awesome couple of years. What I would like to see is, I love grain to glass. I care about supporting, more ecological ways of, harvesting crops and whatnot. Preserving ancient grains and, heirloom heritage species and types. So, what I personally would like to see is, I think that American whiskey can still be more experimental and still push the edges and I think there's still a lot of room for experimentation. I feel like the craft beer world has been incredibly experimental. So I think there's still a lot of room to push and change. But I think that, what I would love to see, what I like is I would like to see more grain glass and more caring about the ingredients that go into the whiskey. I feel like the sort of foodie movement over the past couple of years, people caring a lot more about what goes into the things you're eating and who's making it and the history of it, and just being more thoughtful about food and food production.
All right, appreciate your Lorna. Do you have anything to add?
I think mostly just curious to see, as far as the pandemic goes, what health conscious side are we going to see from this? And the low to no alcohol side is, I understand. I'm curious to see if more people are going to be trying to do that direction. Also, cannabis infused things, CBD, all that side. Like, what else is going to come of that, and what are people going to be experimenting with? And I think too, the sustainable side, as Gen Z is getting older. I feel like they're very socially aware and conscious and looking for brands that are really sustainable and being very current with everything going on. So I'm just kind of curious to see which direction everyone's going to start heading.
And curious, what you said before about diversity. They care very much about inclusion and diversity. So, or female distillers.
All right, Ryan's hounding me in the private chat because I didn't ask a question that he wants, and I know this call is going a bit longer, but it's just great hearing all your insight. We got two people this time. Sometimes we don't have one person on the call, so I think that justifies going a bit longer. But why did you name? Sarah Steepleton asked, why did you name it Corsair? Probably a question we should have answered at the beginning of the call. I apologize. So I feel that it's necessary that we get that answer before we determine a winner here.
Sure. So I would just say that in the beginning, we had thought about, so in the beginning, we were doing a lot of experiments with rum, and we were looking to start actually with a rum. And so I was looking at nautical names.
I hate rum.
Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Like my entire top shelf is just rum.
So I ran across the name Corsair, and I really like K names. And so like Nike, Starbucks, there's a lot of brands that there's something about a K that sort of sound I think is very memorable. So I just like Corsair instantly. But I ran across a definition that said gentleman pirate. And so when I was in my basement illegally moonshining,
Not
fuel
ethanol.
fuel that's right, fuel ethanol. I was so I felt like a gentleman pirate, and I just liked the name, and I don't know, it just sort of stuck, and I feel like it kind of embraced the ethos of what we were doing.
I love it. All right, so crunch time. I don't know if you remember all the questions, but is there a question that stood out to you? And I will announce the winner on who asked that question.
So Distillery Cats.
We had what whiskey would you steal?
Would you steal? Yeah.
Who would you have a whiskey with?
Yeah. Yeah. What kinds of innovation stuff are you guys doing? Like the name, future whiskey. What's the future whiskey? Why do we call it Corsair? What do you think?
Stolen whiskey.
Okay, let's do the stolen.
Still one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So that is Lucas Stidham. So Lucas, congratulations. Derek and Lorna will be sending you an empty bottle. So hopefully that's the name we have listed under the Whiskey Club for your membership is Lucas Stidham. But you can also email guest services at eurekarestaurantgroup.com. But congratulations to Lucas Stidham for the best question of the night. And appreciate everyone's engagement and questions. Derek, Lorna, to say it was a pleasure would be an understatement. Just keep killing it. We love everything you're doing over here. And I hope we were able to introduce some of our members to Corsair that maybe had never had your products. And now you have some lifelong fans.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in.
You.
And thank you guys at Eureka for carrying us. I really appreciate it.
All right. Have a good night. Cheers.